Hey everybody, welcome back. This episode is brought to you by Trident Coffee, the veteran-owned brand where every sip inspires you to live life full steam ahead. I've been drinking their coffees for a while now, and I'm glad to partner with a company whose products I use. At Trident, they're more than just coffee. They're storytellers. Crafted by veterans, their instant cold brew is perfect for those who serve, those who have served, and anyone who values wellness. Featuring natural ingredients like organic mushrooms, adaptogens, and nootropics, it's more than just a morning pick-me-up. It's your new wellness ritual. Enjoy it at home or on the go, wherever your day takes you. Trident Coffee isn't just about great-tasting coffee. It's about empowering you to be the healthiest version of yourself, because great veterans make great citizens. Try their instant cold brew today, along with many other coffee products, and taste the freedom of wellness. Remember, when you choose Trident, you're not just choosing coffee. You're choosing a path of connection through health and wellness. Head on over to tridentcoffee.com and use the promo code TDP15 for 15% off your order. Again, that's TDP15 for 15% off your order. Let's get into round 24 of the tactical transition tips. This time, for the close range group. Those of you who are looking at transition right away to, say, maybe a year from now, learn to manage your stress. And for the medium range group, those of you looking at transition in, say, the 5-year range, learn to tell a story. And for the long range group, those of you who are just starting your career or at least 10 years from your transition, your personal brand starts today.
You transition out is try to model all of the good things, the discipline, the structure, that little bit of rigidity into your everyday life. And I think that that's a great way to make that transition happen, man.
Take the time to invest in yourself because it means everything. You know? That's what the difference is. The difference is not just to collect a check. It's to live 25 years, 30, 40 years after you retire and pay it forward that way.
For my close range group, you need to develop a way to manage your stress. I get it. These careers bring a lot of stress to the table. But the thing is that you're heading into a period that even if you are prepared for it, you're probably going to experience quite a bit of stress. The thought of losing a little bit of who you are. And as much as I say, don't make these jobs and these careers your identity, they are a big part of us. And we wouldn't have stayed with them if it didn't feed something in us. So there is that stress of having to give this up. There's the stress of what are you going to do next? Hopefully you're prepared. And hopefully everything goes the way you want it to, but it's still going to be stressful. The worst part is many of us don't even realize that we are stressed. Maybe the indicators are subtle. Maybe you don't sleep well. Maybe you're always feeling tired. Maybe you're consistently dealing with negative thoughts or a defeatist mindset. Do you go through mood swings? Do you go from laughing 1 minute to cussing out the person in the car next to you? Are you able, and this is, you really need to ask yourself this, when you have the time, are you able to truly relax? And the follow-up question to that is, what is relaxing to you? And are you able to get there? Now, are you able to get there because it takes a few drinks? It takes some sort of, I'll just say, alternative medicines? I'm hoping that that's not bringing you any issues. We won't even go down that route. But what I'm getting at is, does it take something external to get you to really relax? And then I would have to say, if that's the case, then are you able to really kind of shut things down and just be okay with that moment and allowing yourself to, if you use the traffic light analogy for being, on guard, as opposed, it's the red, yellow-green type scenario, depending on how you were taught it. But basically green being you're shut down. You're okay with your surroundings. You're comfortable with where you're at. When you're there, can you really relax? And if you can't, even if you don't perceive yourself as being stressed, you need to ask yourself, why can't I relax? Stress impacts us all. These careers bring a level of stress to us. There's no way around it. They are demanding. They put us in precarious situations. They force us to see things and experience things that a lot of people just don't understand. That's the job. It's how we take those pressure points, how we take those influences on us, and how are we dealing with them. I mentioned some indicators previously. You really need to do a strong self-assessment of what are the indicators of stress and where do they fall for you? Even the ones that you don't perceive, or maybe you do perceive it and you're ignoring them, they're going to catch up with you. Like I said also, you're heading into a very stressful time, especially if you're in that group that maybe your transition isn't happening when you planned it to happen. So that's another stressor. All of these things are going to have an impact on your overall health and well-being. So I would say that the first thing you need to do, and please understand, I'm not in any way a professional. I'm just trying to give you the wave tops advice, the 30,000 foot view advice. But basically, find your center. You've got to start with you. You're the eye of the storm. To sit there and think that everything else around you needs to be fixed first and then you'll be fine is really kind of maybe putting a Band-Aid on the gunshot wound. Figure out you. Figure out your center. Figure out how you need to get right so that regardless of what's going on around you, you're going to be okay with you, and you're going to find those methods that get you back to green, that get you back to that ability to completely come down, or I'll say shut down. Acknowledge the indicators, especially if you've been aware of them and to this point you've been ignoring them, saying, oh, it's not me. Those things aren't a big deal. If you're experiencing any of those things, and trust me, if you just Google symptoms of stress, the list is a lot longer than the items that I addressed. Take a look at them. See what you're experiencing, and even understand that if you're mildly experiencing them, that is stress. Once you figure out you, that's when you start working from the center outward. What's your home life like? What are the stresses that come from, there's no way to get away from stress in our daily life. It's a nature of the beast. But are the stresses external in the sense that they're outside of the norms? And I don't know what the norm is for you, but work on you. The next level is work on your home life. See what is going on there. Is it something that besides working on yourself, now it's something that you and your spouse need to start working on as a team to bring not only a better center or a better level of green for both of you, but bring a level of green to your family? Then start looking at work. Granted, you're closing in on your transition, but if you've gotten to the point where you feel like work is the absolute worst thing, and it might just be all of the ancillary stuff that you're just carrying over to the job, and maybe the stressors at the job are just the job itself, that it's not the source of the problem, but maybe you've been putting the blame on, oh, the reason why I'm drinking so much, the reason why I can't sleep, the reason why I get angry so much is because I'm so pissed off at work. But maybe it goes back to just you and how you're dealing with normal stress, but you're trying to put the blame on what's going on at work. You might work for an organization that is toxic. I can't do anything about that. You've got to figure out a way to make it to your transition and what's going to make you the best you can be. Some of the things that you can do to work on addressing how you cope with stress, at minimum, find that place at your home. I don't know if it's in the middle of the country. I don't know if it's at the beach. Some place that you can access on a regular basis where you feel, and as weird as it's going to sound, where you feel safe. And get that place where once a week you can just go and turn everything off and really kind of listen to what's going on in your head, what's going on in your heart, and see if you can get into that green zone. If when you've got no external influences, you're in that quiet, happy place and you still can't shut down and just be okay, that should be a serious indicator that maybe you really need to go talk to someone who can help you professionally. I will go to the extreme of saying maybe look at potentially meditation, and there's that aspect of if you need to be in a completely dark space and closing your eyes and all of that. I'm not even talking about going to that level, but if you feel you need to go there, then try it. But I'm just talking about that place which allows you to completely go green. Maybe that is meditation. I don't know. I'm just saying, find that place for you. If you get there and you find that you can start calming down, then start looking at all of the little indicators or the individual indicators of what's causing stress in your life and how can you make positive changes to those. This process is not necessarily something that you're going to resolve tomorrow. It's going to take some work. But the most important thing is you've got to start with yourself. If you can't be good with yourself, if you can't get into your spot where you can completely shut down, I don't think reducing any external factors is going to take your stress away. You're always going to be under a certain level of stress. And prolonged, that is bound to have a negative impact on your overall health, not to mention the impact that it's going to have on your relationships. With that, though, like I said, life, our jobs, our families, all of these things bring us stress. Stress in small doses isn't necessarily a bad thing. So on the opposite extreme, if you sit there and you say, oh, I'm stressed, I couldn't sleep last night, so I must be stressed out, is it just something where it's a one-off event that's occurring? Maybe you've got a huge project that you're responsible for. Of course, that is going to add stress in your life, but that may take you to a point like where right now you can't get into your green zone, but it's short term. So I'm not saying that you're going to be able to remove all stress from your life. It's more about figuring out how you deal with the stress. And then when there isn't anything beyond just the normal stress of day to day, our life, our families, our jobs, that's when you need to really examine and consider getting some professional help if you can't get yourself to green. So figure out you first, then work on everything outside of you. For the medium range group, you need to learn to tell a story. When you move on from these careers, one of the things that you're going to need to do is sell yourself. Telling stories helps drive home your experiences, your abilities, and the skill set that you're bringing to the next organization. Don't think of these as the I'm so cool stories. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is the ability to take your experiences and translate them into telling the story of how your skill set helps the next organization that you're going to. How you can get them to buy into you, not only as a person, but as an asset to their organization. And by being able to turn your experiences into relatable stories, gets better buy-in from those people. And stories can be anything from the first time, say, you meet with a company representative, to the interview process, to the negotiation for salary. All of these are going to be benefited by you being able to tell a story. And where I'm going with this is, we can do a resume. We could do a notebook on all of our achievements that shows all of our certificates. Those are just facts. Facts aren't necessarily memorable. They obviously tell who you are and what you've done, but you being able to take those skill sets, the experiences that you've garnered using those achievements and all of the training that you've been through, is what sells you. You have to take that experience and bring it to the table with wherever you want to end up, and build a rapport with the person or the organization on the other side of that table. They need to see you as more than just the certificates and the training and experience. They need to see you as the person. So it's that storytelling aspect. By being able to, you probably often heard the term, you need to toot your own horn. I know in my experience, especially going through the promotional process within my organization, many people kind of fell back on, when they would go into the promotional process, well, I submitted my resume. Why do I need to explain what I've done? You know what I've done. To a degree, that's true. But at the same token, just lines on a piece of paper, just a bunch of certificates, doesn't really paint a full picture of everything that you not only have done, but how you can tailor all of those experiences and all of that those skill sets to the future, to other endeavors, other situations that you might encounter. Like I said, you might even want to, well, not that you might want to, when you get into the negotiation process for your salary, one of the things that being able to tell a story helps you is, I want X number of dollars, whatever X is. And the reason why is, hey, not just because I've got all of this training and experience, but let me tell you about an incident that happened that I did this and it saved the organization money. Or I see that your company does X, Y, and Z. I can also apply that same process. So you tell this story of an incident that you did that helped the company, that helped you promote, whatever it is, but the story is what becomes relatable more than just, hey, I have a certificate that says I've done this task or I've learned this skill and I want to bring it to your company. Always remember that stories are memorable, and we all have those instances where we've met somebody who you may not even have realized that it's that they're a good storyteller. It's that they're a good talker, that they engage you, that they make you feel like you're part of whatever they're talking about in that conversation. That's storytelling. You need to work on being better at that. Some of the things to avoid, though, don't ramble. If you're telling a story and you've hit the points that you want to hit, move on from it. Also, don't use the jargon. Don't use the speak that we've gotten used to using in our line of work today. Put it in terms that the person who's receiving the story not only can benefit from it, but that they can feel part of it. And if you use a bunch of jargon, quickly you're going to lose them because they won't know what you're talking about. And the last thing you want is somebody constantly interrupting you. What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that? So start practicing just getting used to not using the jargon when you're not operating in a work environment that we're in today. Additionally, as you're telling the story, read the audience. You've got to be able to tell, are they engaged with it? You're going to see the expressions on their face if you're catching their interest. If so, obviously keep pushing forward. If all of a sudden they're having a change of facial expression or they start looking down and you can tell that they've lost contact with you per se, you need to either change your story or figure out how you're going to wrap it up without just simply falling off a cliff. The other thing is, if you're taking them down a journey that all of a sudden you might realize, ooh, this doesn't work in this scenario. I didn't mean to start telling the story this way. You need to be able to pivot and move it into a different direction. All of that comes with practice. You have to work at this. You have to put some effort into, besides just simply saying, okay, when I get into that interview next month, next week, next year, whatever it is, 5 years from now, I'm going to tell a good story. It's not going to come naturally unless you practice it. So work on how you deliver stories now, especially when it's not important. Try telling a story to a family member, to a friend. Don't use the jargon. Figure out if you can read them and adapt or change the story as you're going to keep their interest. When you get done telling the story, ask them for their critiques and take their feedback, and don't think it was like, oh yeah, that's just, take what they're saying and put it into practice on how you can improve. I would highly recommend that you take the opportunity to listen to TED Talks. TED Talks are very curated speeches. I've had the opportunity to have guests who have done some TED Talks, and one of the things that they've told me, primarily offline, but because we really didn't go deep into them in the podcast, but the topics that they're given to talk about are curated, and they're given a time limit on what they're going to speak about, and they work with a representative of the TED Talks to curate a total experience for the audience. So listen to some of those and listen to how they tell their stories and how they work through it to keep the story engaging. And then from that, again, just work on developing your routine, if you want to call it that. Take your experiences, keep a journal now while you're working. Try to remember some poignant events that have occurred, because how many times has somebody said, hey, what did you do during X? And you'll go, yeah, I've done that. And then you struggle to think about, well, when was that time? But when you're not forced to think about it, you'll remember 15 times that you did whatever it was. So kind of sit down, keep yourself a notebook now, create a journal of events, especially going forward. So you go, oh, this event would make a good story. And then make that the basis. And then adapt that story to whatever environment you're going to be pitching that story. It's not always going to be somebody who wants to know it in the form of a military operation or a first responder operation, but it can be a chaotic event. It can be an interpersonal event. If you're a leader right now, it could be conflict resolution. So you can take the basis of that story and make it your set, your outline for how you're going to sell your skill set in addressing that similar type issue. Just remember, stories are memorable. The people who tell good stories are memorable. The people who simply rely on facts get very boring and very forgettable real quick. Long range. You've got some time in front of you. You've got a career in front of you. Your brand, you are a brand. No two ways about it. Your brand starts today. You need to think about, and as your career progresses, your goals and where you want to get to might change, but develop and curate your brand starting today that allows you to pivot, because you're always presenting and I don't want to sound like a goody two-shoes or anything like that. What I'm getting at is you always want to present the positive image. Now, if you have zero interest in moving anywhere beyond these careers, then don't worry about your brand and just go at however you are going to present yourself, especially with social media, however haphazardly you want to. I don't recommend this because you never know tomorrow what might change in your life. And the less that you have to go back and scrub, the better off you'll be. So starting today, be very mindful of the image that you're presenting. Understand this also. Even if you have no goals beyond these careers, I'm going to ride this train. When this train ends, I'm going to go fish. I'm going to go play golf. I'm going to go do whatever. You've got no aspirations beyond these careers. And in no way am I implying that that's a negative thing. Great, good on you. If that's all you want to do, you want to get to the end of this career and then literally be done. But the thing you also got to understand is if you don't think about who you are and who your brand is and what you present about yourself, you need to be mindful that that also represents the organization that you're with today. And if you're doing things, saying things, presenting things, putting yourself in situations that can be perceived in a negative way or that could be perceived as a violation of our organizations, understand those can have negative ramifications on you. It is what it is. We chose professions that have a little bit of that over us. On top of the fact that we are in a time now where it's only going to continue to be more of a microscope on these professions and who the ancillary associations are in our lives, what we affiliate ourselves with, and what that brings not just to us in the sense of what attention it brings to us, but what does that then bring to our organizations? Like it or not, that's the way it is. You have to be mindful of it. There's no way that we're ever going to put this genie back in the bottle. Social media is part of our lives now. Who we are outside of our immediate friends and family is open to a huge or a larger audience than ever before. And that audience is just going to continue growing. Be mindful of this. Even if you change anything today, there's still everything that was behind you. You don't have to go long without finding a news story about somebody who posted something 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it is. The ability to access information as far as how far back and how quickly evolves every single day. So maybe 5 years ago, if you had something negative 5 years prior, it might never be found. Conversely, we're 5 years forward, but now there's the likelihood that something 20 years back, I'm just throwing out a number, could be found more rapidly. It's just the progression and the way that things advance. You have to be mindful of this. I've known people through my career that were very anti-social media. They didn't want to have anything public. The only thing I would say to that is don't completely walk away from it. Don't completely shun it. Use it wisely and try to use it as best as you can to your benefit. On the flip side, if you were somebody to say, I don't want anything social media today in 2024, and then 15, 20 years from now, you've adopted this practice and then you come to your transition, having no social media presence or a very limited, maybe your name got mentioned in a newspaper article or something, but having little to nothing is actually going to look kind of weird. So be mindful of that. Embrace the social media, use it to your advantage. Where you need to start, audit your presence right now. Think about the things that you've posted in the past. Think about the things that you post regularly. Think about those that you follow or are publicly affiliated with. Again, I am not telling you who you can or cannot be affiliated with. You just have to understand the repercussions of those affiliations and look at those affiliations from the eyes of your organization. Would they feel that if it came to light, hey, Joe or Jane is a member of whatever group it is, would your organization think that that looks positively on you and thus their organization, or would it look negatively? And then you make the decision where you're going to go from there. I would say Google yourself right now. See what information is immediately coming up about you. If there's something very negative about you, work with, and there are companies that will help you scrub that information from the internet. That is a process that takes some work, and you need somebody who really can specialize in it. But the first thing you can do is, whatever that negative issue was, don't repeat it. Don't continue that pattern of behavior, because if you find it and you kind of cringe, you're like, "Ooh, I wish I wouldn't have done whatever it is or posted whatever it is or anything like that," don't repeat it. Make social media and all of those tools something that makes you better, that promotes the best version of you, so that when people find you, because understand this, your social media presence is the first place that a lot of people are going to learn about you before they ever probably actually physically meet you. So curate that. Make whatever they find about you. It doesn't have to lean one specific way or another. It doesn't have to be a middle of the road vanilla presence either. You can have an identity. Just understand that where you want to get to, that identity could help you or hurt you. And how do you want to curate that? And then now, until this ride is over for our current organizations, how can that identity be a positive or a negative to your career? And just remember, what you're thinking today or what you want to get to today may not be where you want to get to a year from now, 5 years from now. So be mindful of what you're presenting and how can it evolve with you. Again, I would say it doesn't have to be fake. It doesn't have to look like you're overly trying to curate this not genuine persona about yourself. But at the same token, do you want to be 10 years down the road and maybe your presence still relays a frat boy image or somebody who lacks responsibility, whatever it is? Because the other thing you got to remember too, all the goofy and silly things that you post on social media, who's to say that your organization's not going to see what you're doing or what you're posting? So just be mindful of that. We're in an awkward time. I don't want to say awkward. We're in a time right now where social media is our calling card. And unfortunately, we don't always get to present that when we want to. And in wrapping it up, what you present, the image that you portray in all of that is what people are going to think of you before they ever meet you. So just be mindful of that. So in closing this up, the close range group, you got to find a way to stress or manage your stress. Find that way that allows you to get to green, get to your Zen, whatever you want to call it, But don't let these jobs ruin you. Don't let these jobs impact you so much that it ruins your family and your relationships outside these jobs. For the medium range group, learn to tell a story. Sell yourself as more than just a bunch of bullet points on a resume. And for the long range group, your personal brand begins today. And like any other company out there, you need to protect the brand. The brand is what represents you. Have that brand represent you in the most positive light, or at least in the light that makes you the most marketable to where you want to get to. I'm closing this up. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everybody who's listening and watching. Please keep sharing it with anybody who you think is going to benefit from the podcast. I can't ask this enough. Please follow the podcast. Give me a rating. Let me know what you like, what you don't like. I can't change anything until I know what you need to hear from me. And other than that, we'll see you on the next one.